Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Knight. I am the Director of Marketing and Sales for Chalice Press, and I am excited to be here this afternoon speaking with Chalice author Stephen Ingram, coming to us live from Birmingham, Alabama. Am I right?
Roll Tide.
That's right. Very cool, very cool. And we are here to talk about this book, Organic Student Ministry. Hot off the presses, and I'm excited to get a chance to chat and find out more about you and find out more about this book and let others out there know about it. So tell us, for folks out there who have not yet picked up a copy, Organic Student Ministry, what is the book about?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, so here we go. So yeah, Organic is, I've been doing student ministry for about 17 years, or a little over 17 years. And Organic is just as much about the failures of those 17 years as it is about the triumphs. I'm a big fan of learning from your failures, but I'm an even bigger fan of learning from other people's failures. And so hopefully Organic can help some folks learn from some things I messed up on. Really what it is, it's a holistic approach to student ministry, one that starts from day one and hopefully will carry you all the way through a long career, not only in student ministry, but in each church you serve. Really the basis of it is to go in and really do an anthropological interview of your church. To get really down to kind of the core DNA of what's going on at your church, from language to the history to the sacred cows, all those things that you need to know in order to really be able to do your job well. And really what it is a toolbox. It's not a one-stop approach. It's not a plug and play as I talk about in the book. We're trying to avoid planting palm trees in Antarctica. And what the approach that we're taking is to give you a toolbox that will allow you to go in and to really do that anthropological work to get down into the DNA of your church so that you can understand it better. But at the same time, remembering that we come to churches with our own DNA, our own stuff, our own baggage we bring. And so to really address that as well, and then give you the tools to move forward and to grow ministries at a sustainable pace, and to grow ministries that in a natural way that's going to be both life-giving to you and to the church that you serve.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, I think, like you said, a lot of other books or resources out there sort of promise, there's sort of this promise of, this is it, this is the silver bullet, this is the ticket, and so what you've done here is, just given the toolbox, and given people the freedom. You're giving people permission to adapt and to figure out who they are and what works. Would you say this works particularly in a smaller to mid-sized church, or any church youth ministry program can pick this up and adapt it, use it to figure out what works for them?
Yeah, I think you can use it across the board. I think it does work especially well in a smaller to mid-sized church. And when you think about it, the fastest growing number of youth workers in the country today come from that demographic, from smaller to mid-sized churches, and youth workers who are doing this either part-time or volunteer. And so that's one of the resources we wanted to be able to give in writing this book, is to really give these folks who are out there in the trenches week by week, day by day, doing the hard and good work of youth ministry, to give them a toolbox that they might not otherwise have. Now, I do want to say that, other books that have been published on sort of a systematic approach to youth ministry, they give you great, they give you a lot of great things. But usually it's a program that you overlay onto your culture. What we're trying to do with Organic is not give you a program to overlay on your culture, which might or might not work, but we're really trying to help you understand your culture and then grow goodness from that culture. Talk about in the book a little bit about how every church is really different, just like soil is different. If you go out to the west coast of California, the soil there is going to be very, very different than the soil that I'm working in here in Birmingham, Alabama, which is going to be different than Maine, then different than Nevada, and different than Wisconsin. And so both figuratively and just factually, I mean, we're working in different sorts of environments. And so it's important to understand the soil that you're working in, the environment you're working in order to be able to grow the best yielding crops, if you want to speak in a metaphor. So, yeah.
I love that. You were talking about anthropological, and
it's a mouthful.
Well, and I guess the other word that comes to my mind is just contextual, right?
That's right.
Exactly. Yeah. You're figuring out who you are and your context, and figuring out then what works for you. And I love the organic imagery. And all that. So you've written a couple other books before this one, and I'm just curious why this one and why now, and kind of what led to you writing this one after it's 17 years.
Oh, it's interesting you asked that, because Organic was actually the first book I set out to write. Organic, I started to really dig into the nuts and bolts of organic probably about 6 years ago now. One of my dear friends and mentors, a guy named Mark DeVries, he and I were talking one day, and I said, I got this idea for a book. And really more so than an idea for a book, I think it's just how I do ministry and how I would like to really lean into that. And so Mark said, well, yeah, man, let's write the book. And so I began just thinking about it and processing it. And during that time, in the interim between working on it and processing it, I ended up getting 2 other book contracts and ended up writing those. But the whole time continuing to work through. And to be honest with you, I'm really glad that I had that time in between, because it really gave me about 4 years to really process through in an even more intentional way the what you have in organic. So it's a book that's a long time coming.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. So 17 years in youth ministry.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. Like, how did you get started on that path, and what has the last 17 years been like?
Yeah. So it started in youth group. I mean, isn't that the story of most youth ministers? It started in youth group. I had a youth minister who cared deeply for me, a guy named Seth, which I think he might be watching right now. Seth Coleman, great, amazing youth minister, still doing incredible work today. And Seth really poured into me in a really difficult time in my life. A lot of family upheaval. Mom had left. Just the world was just kind of crumbling around me, and Seth kind of stood over me and kept it from crushing me, essentially. And through that, he really just kind of fostered some gifts that he saw in me. And one day, about 9 months to a year after all that craziness happened, I go into his office and I say, Seth, I think I'm ready to tell my story. And he said, hey, can you hold on a minute? Just step out for a second. And I was like, what a jerk. Okay, so I'm just kind of shared my soul with him, and he tells me to step out. I walk back in. He says, hey, I got you 3 places you're going to be speaking over the next 3 weeks. We've just been waiting on you to get comfortable with what we've already been seeing inside of you. And so from that moment on, I was just I felt like John Wesley in a way. I was sort of the circuit riding youth guy and going around and talking to these churches. And I really realized through all that gosh, if this guy could have been so instrumental for me in that point of absolute pain in my life, maybe I could do that for other people. And so yeah, that began that, along with just the mentorship that he gave me. And Seth is in the book, by the way. He's the youth minister you read about in the book. And through that, he really opened up a lot of doors and trained me and taught me what it looks like to do good youth ministry in the local church. And so, I went and I was a religion major, got my master's of divinity after that. And the whole time, there was never a question. It was youth ministry. And yeah. Been riding that train ever since.
Yeah, yeah. I want to hear more about the last 17 years, but let me jump in and say I was just reflecting yesterday personally on the impact that a couple of youth leaders had in my life when I was in high school, and who I think I'm thinking so many folks in youth ministry out there who are watching this. You're right. That's probably where it starts. Seeing that modeled, and having those folks encourage you, because then I went on to essentially do youth ministry when I was in my 20s, and then college ministry and so forth. So you're absolutely right. What an important role those folks play in our lives in getting us, at least getting us to see who we could be and who we could become, and the opportunity and the path that exists there. So that's so cool.
Yeah, they end up being mirrors that show you a version of yourself you probably couldn't see on your own. It's pretty incredible stuff.
Good stuff. Well, 17 years.
Yep.
You're not that old. So literally, since you got out of high school, you've been doing youth ministry.
Yep, that's exactly right.
And a lot has changed in 17 years. Am I right?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
Technology and so what's that been like? What's the last 17 years been like?
Yeah, I think the biggest change is clip art. We're just not we're not using clip art anymore. Or at least most of us are not using clip art anymore. I remember doing my first youth newsletters and thinking, man, if I can really find some sweet clip art, this is going to sell this thing. This rafting trip is going to shoot over the moon. I mean, I got the nice logo, but no, I think our understanding has changed. Kids are still kids, and they're still struggling. The things they're struggling with are different to different degrees. But I think how we understand youth ministry is so different than it was, 15, 20 years ago. I think a couple of those pieces. One is when the National Study of Youth and Religion came out. Just an amazing study. Christian Smith and Kenda Dean obviously worked on that, and just some incredible work that came out of that really helped us understand where some of our major holes were in youth ministry, but also really where we had lost our way in youth ministry. But also it reflected a greater problem in the church, and Kenda talks about that in her book Almost Christian, just about the greater problem, how our students' faith really is a mirror of their parents' faith. We just get to see it in a little more holistic way with the kids. But so I think one of the big things that's changed is that we can no longer understand youth ministry as ministry to youth. It's ministry to families. It's ministry to parents. It's ministry to family systems and structures. And if we try to silo and go off to the side and say, hey, we're gonna throw a frisbee, we're gonna eat our pizza, and we're gonna sing Kumbaya, then man, we're not only failing youth ministry, but we're failing the church. And so I think that's been one of the biggest changes. Another one is our culture, and this goes back to a family issue. Our culture is so addicted to busyness, to constantly going. I played 4 sports in high school, and I did so and went to youth group every single week. I went to church every Sunday. I never missed a retreat or a mission trip because of an extracurricular. And that's just that's not the world our kids live in anymore, and it's terrifying. I read a study the other week that said the average 7th grader, I think it was the average 7th grader, has a higher stress level and higher stress impact than a 50-year-old man 40 years ago.
Wow.
That's unbelievable. That is unbelievable. And I think the pendulum is still swinging to that side. Now the hope and prayer is that it will move back to the center. But right now we continue to move forward, and I believe it's an addiction. I believe we wear our busyness like a badge of merit, and I think we've become addicted to not slowing down, and I think it's killing our kids. So,
wow,
I think those are a few things that have changed. Youth ministry is not as simple as it. Not that it was ever simple, but it used to be you do some trips, you do some retreats, you know, you have at least one good Bible study during the week, and you're doing pretty good. But you know, as we know, church doesn't hold quite the place in society as it does anymore. It's not the standard bearer. I think that's good. If you know, I think that's really a good thing. I think the church does better when it's not necessarily in the place of highest power. But we're having to relearn what it looks like to be in that second chair or third chair, even in our culture. So,
what I hear you talking about is this idea of being intergenerational, and I think that was kind of the opposite was what the style of youth ministry that I grew up with. You know, where the kids all get shuttled off over here,
that's right,
and it's very compartmentalized. And what I hear you saying is it's got to be, like you said, family system, and the whole thing has to be taken into consideration. That's got to be challenging for youth ministers today, if they're not particularly in a church context or a ministry context where the leadership views it all that way. And how does that, I would imagine that youth leaders have to really be on the same page with the senior pastor and other folks to view it that way. Am I right?
Yeah. I think it's kind of two-pronged. Most youth ministers didn't get in youth ministry to hang out with parents. You know, most youth ministers got into youth ministry either because it was really impactful to them, or they wanted to avoid adults at all cost. And it's probably somewhere in between. But yeah, most of us got into this game to really be able to minister with students. And then, you know, around 2005, if we were, you know, really following what was happening with the National Study of Youth and Religion, that rug kind of got pulled out from under a lot of us, and we had to reevaluate our call. So I think one is this sense of maybe our calling is different than it traditionally has been in youth ministry. But yeah, I think the second one is just the structures, the overarching structures of the local church. It used to be that youth ministers and pastors didn't really communicate unless there was a window broken. Now, if your pastors and youth ministers and children's ministers are not communicating regularly, you're failing. You will fail at not only youth ministry but ministry to 2/3 of your congregation. And so you got to be in direct contact with each other, and not in a reporting in, here's the bad things that are happening, but creating ministry together, and doing good, holistic, across the board ministry that's going to affect family systems, not just pieces of a family system. So yeah, I think it's changed dramatically.
Yeah. I want to talk, I'm just curious to talk more about this idea of busyness and how can the whole church, not just the youth ministry piece of it, because like we're saying, it can't just be, you know, one wheel going in that direction. It's got to be the whole. How can churches, including youth ministries, try to address that whole busyness issue and in helping kids and parents slow down?
One is I think we can't be a part of the problem.
Right.
A lot of times churches are a part of the problem. We act like, and especially in youth ministry, you know, a lot of times our expectations of youth is if you're not there 2, 3, 4 times a week, then you're not really involved. Where else in life are we involved in church like that? I mean, you don't see adults that are there 4 times a week. And so sometimes what we do is we set our kids up for failure. We set our kids up to believe that once they graduate high school, if they're not involved in church 3 or 4 times a week, then they're not really involved. And so I think we create some false expectations, but I also think we create a lot of busyness. You know, I talk about in the book the need for pruning. The modern American church is horrible at pruning. We love planning, we love creating, we love pouring Miracle Grow all over our stuff, but we are horrible at pruning. But if you know much about gardening and farming, especially gardening, you have to prune. And nobody has a problem with pruning things that are dead. Pruning things that are dead gives you a sense of accomplishment, feels great, right? The problem is if you really want to grow beyond sort of a baseline level, you got to prune some good things too, so that great things can grow. So I think one, not being a part of the problem, and helping families kind of tone down a little bit. I think the second piece is we got to be prophetic. I talk about this a little bit in the book. We have youth ministers are in a really unique place to be able to speak prophetically in our churches, in our culture, kind of across generations. I think we see maybe more so than anyone else how busy our kids are, and how our kids are burning the candle at both ends, and how our kids are just run ragged. They're exhausted. I have kids now, when we go away on retreat, we're just on a retreat about a week and a half ago. And the place that we do this retreat, there's no cell phone reception at this place. Now, that wasn't intentional. We've been going there for like 9 or 10 years, but this place has no cell phone reception, and you would not believe the amount of relief that our kids get just for the fact that they're not constantly having to check in. They're not constantly being judged. They're not constantly having to check the number of likes they've got, and they can really be disconnected. So I think one thing is to give our families places to disconnect, to just be away. And to also help them understand in a prophetic way, listen, you're killing your kids. Your kids are dying these fast-paced, painful deaths. I have kids that are all-state players in football and volleyball and all these different sports. They could go and play at any college they want to, any college or university. They get to their senior year and they quit because they're so run down. Something that we call a game has become a job, and that's a problem. And the same thing happens with academics. I love academics. I love learning, but at the point where it becomes just a burden, and it it just wears our kids out. It makes them not love learning, and that's a terrible thing. So I think we have a role to be prophetic. I think we have a role to speak out to our culture and say, look, we're killing our generations, or we're killing our next generations. And we're hurting our world by doing that.
Yeah. Well, I picked up on a little Jim Collins, good to great there that you're throwing down. Yeah. And I love what you said about pruning. Chalice produces a camp resource called Inside Out, and the theme for the next year, not next summer, but the summer after that, is this Jesus is the vine, we are the branches, and that whole passage about pruning that's in there. And I really appreciate what you said there. Yeah. So we got this question on YouTube. Thank you for watching. And I think you've talked about a couple things already, but I'll ask the question and see if there's more here. What is the most difficult issue that you are finding in the soil of youth ministry now?
The most difficult issue, I think, one, like we've already hit on, I think, is the busyness of our kids and families. And the flip side of the busyness is the lack of ability to reflect, the lack of ability to actually soak something in. We treat ministry, we treat the scripture, we treat prayer, we treat it all in this kind of fast food way, where the quicker, the cheaper, and the easier it is to consume, the more or the better it is. And that's just not the case. If you look at the most beautiful and important and long-lasting incarnations of the faith that we see through church history, it's not done in a fast way. It's done in a slow, steady, worshipful, and methodical way, where we let the text, we let prayers, we let experiences wash over us and change us. And as of right now, in our modern American culture, we give no room for those sorts of experiences. And so one of the ways I think youth ministry can do that, to answer the question, is to provide space, provide sanctuary. And that's a concept I think we might have to reclaim in youth ministry, is what does it like to begin to provide sanctuary for our students? And when I mean sanctuary, I mean protection from everything that's outside, to give them a quiet place, to give them a place that's thoughtful, a place that will not let them ask easy questions, and especially won't give them easy answers, but to give them the space to go deeper, to reflect, to slow down, to breathe, In my context, I mean, I'm in Birmingham, so I'm in the belt buckle of the Bible Belt. But my kids are involved in 4, 5, 6 Bible study kind of things a week, and maybe 3 or 4 of them are here at Canterbury. I mean, there are tons of community Bible studies, parachurch things that they're involved in. And so part of it is, I think we have an absorption in my context. And again, that's looking at my soil, okay? I have a friend who's a youth minister up in Seattle, Washington. That's not their soil. That's not what they're dealing with. But in my soil, kids are spinning, and our religious culture is not helping that at all. So that's one of the big things, I think. Another is what we saw in National Study of Youth and Religion. Their parents, we've got to be about the business. The church has to be about the business of helping parents understand good theology, helping parents understand deep theology, and helping them re-engage the question. Again, I think our parents are just as guilty of this fast food kind of Christianity, and the quicker, the easier answer, the more we're going to accept it. And so, how do we create those spaces for our parents as well?
We have another question here from YouTube. Let me go straight to this one. From Sarah, she asks, where can churches start in transitioning to a more intergenerational understanding of youth ministry? She says, in my context, adults are fast to donate money or items, but not time. Youth ministry.
I do a lot of consulting with the consulting group Ministry Architects. I'm a lead consultant with them. I work with usually around 12 to 15 churches a year. And the number one thing we hear across the board, almost every church we go to, I can't get enough volunteers. And usually these are churches that are saying, the ones that are saying I can't get enough volunteers, their volunteer standard, the number of volunteers they want, is already way too low anyways. They're saying, I can't get 5 volunteers for a 60-person retreat. Oh my gosh, that scares me to death. Like, that's terrifying, okay? So their numbers are already low, and they're saying, I can't even reach that threshold. So one of the number one things we have to do, especially if you are in a mainline church, you have got to lean in. We have got to lean in to these baptismal vows. When we bring those little babies up and they're cute and they're snuggly and they mess with the preacher and all, we've got to lean into the promises that we make when we say, this is a child of ours. We're going to raise this child. We're going to nurture them in Christ's love, and we are going to be their spiritual parents along with their natural parents for the duration of their time here. And so I think if you are in a mainline church, or if you're in a church that does infant baptism and your church makes vows, enters into a covenant with those parents and with God, then you have got to consistently lean into that theology and say, no, this is our child. You don't get to outsource. You don't get to outsource their spirituality. It's too important for that. And when I say outsource, I mean outsource it to people like me. I am one person. These youth ministers they're one person. So yeah, I think that's the start. Is how do we engage volunteers and help them have ownership in the ministry? Not ask them to join alongside our ministry, but come in as co-ministers with them. There's a whole chapter in the book that talks about that, about empowering volunteers and figuring out what God's calling them to do in their ministry. If we really believe in the priesthood of all believers, if we really believe in that concept, then we've got to lean into that and really empower people to do the ministry that God's calling them to. So I think that's one. I think the second one is again, de-siloing your youth ministry. One of the things we do every week is send, as a part of our weekly announcements to parents, we include a paragraph in there with some questions about what we're learning that week, what we're talking about, and especially here are 3 questions to engage your kids with this week. And again, just creating that ministry with parents, with volunteers, and then thirdly, you got to be in good communication with your pastor, and creating ministry opportunities together. So I hope that helps out a little bit.
Yeah, I know that sometimes parents feel like I've got a teenage daughter, and I tell you, sometimes we just butt heads, and
Oh yeah.
the communication breaks down, and it's sort of like she's not paying any attention to me.
Right.
But I know from all of the studies that that say parents are still the biggest influence
Yep.
on their kids, and even if you don't feel like that's the case,
Yep.
you feel like it really isn't a case of outsourcing, like you said, to this youth leader, this youth pastor. The parents have to be absolutely involved, and they are the biggest influences.
Upwards
on
of
the kids still.
Upwards of 70% of a kid's spiritual influence is coming straight from their parents. Now, if we default on that, look what we've done. We left ourselves with around 30% to work on, and I don't know anybody who would put themselves in that kind of financial situation. I don't know anyone who would make a bet only having 30%. So why in the world do we leave it up to chance with our kids' spirituality? It blows my mind. I don't think we do it intentionally. I don't think parents do it intentionally. But the other thing I tell parents all the time, they're like, well, I'm not going to come to that youth event because, my kid's not going to want me there. I'm going to want them to have their own space. Good. That's awesome that you want them to have their space. And you might not be there for your kid. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to let you be in your kid's small group. I'm not going to let you sit beside your kid during worship. But your kid's friends and those kids that are younger and those kids that are older, they need you. Don't be there for your kid on that retreat, but be there for those other kids. And there are good ways to do that. There are good ways to do that.
That's good. Well, we've gone in this first half hour pretty heavy and pretty deep, fast.
Yeah. Sorry.
But this is great. I mean, this is real, right? This is youth ministry. But I love this quote, and we love to put it out there. You've been called the Steve Jobs of the youth ministry world.
Yeah.
And, I'm just wondering where the black turtleneck is, but
I don't look good in turtlenecks.
But, I mean, that's pretty awesome. That's a pretty cool quote. That obviously speaks to sort of your creativity and your innovative kind of way of doing ministry. So I'm just curious, kind of like you said, 17 years into this thing, and kind of what do you see happening right now? We've talked about the busyness. We haven't talked as much about the technology piece. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that. You've written some interesting blog posts related to I think Snapchat and even Tinder. And so what's going on out there? What are some of the other trends that you're seeing? And
I think technology is one of the major things that's changed. We communicate in different ways. A buddy of mine, Andrew Zersky, just wrote a really cool book about that. I would encourage you to check it out. But we communicate in different ways. We are more inundated with communication, and as with anything, it's a double-edged sword. There are some absolute advantages to that. I mean, if you think about not just in our Western American context, but the rise of YouTube, of Twitter, of social media has created amazing revolutions all over the world. It's creating accountability, both here in America and in other places, in terms of accountability to power. But then you bring that back to the local youth ministry context. I think technology is one of those things that we have the opportunity to give our kids a little bit of a reprieve from. But also, I think we have to use it as a tool. I think we're moving societally away from understanding church as something that happens within four walls. I think we're moving away dramatically from something that happens on Sunday morning for an hour. And so if we're moving away from those ideas, how can we use this amazing technology that we've been given to make our faith more mobile? To help engage our kids, our parents, when they're at the lake or they're at the beach or they're in the mountains or at the soccer field on Sunday morning, because that's where they are. So how do we make our faith more mobile? How do we make it more transitory? And how do we help engage them in ways that are going to be natural? I think part of the problem is we've kind of fallen into this mindset where we believe that the only good things that happen in youth ministry happen in the youth room or in the church, and that's just not the case. So in terms of greater trends, I think the social media world is a minefield for kids. I mean, I thank God that there was no such thing as Snapchat and Instagram when I was in high school. Oh my goodness, that would have been horrible. You know, our prefrontal cortex, our frontal lobes were not developed. And you know what? We like to just push the boundaries and try crazy things and do stupid stuff. And now what the problem is technology has not let our adolescents do that in a way that isn't just chock full of ramifications. So I think that adds to the pressure too. They are always on camera. They are always on the stage. And man, that produces some intense fatigue that I'm not sure we know how to measure yet. And we might not know that for another 15 or 20 years. So I think those are some of the challenges that we see. But again, it's a double-edged sword. I think we have opportunities there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, where there are challenges, there are also opportunities to speak prophetically.
That's right.
And
every time.
Use those tools for the good as well. This is a comment from YouTube. Half of our youth group, about 20 people on a Wednesday, are from the community. Family is not involved in the church and don't attend on Sunday, so it's hard to connect with those parents.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? That's a challenge.
Yeah, that's what an amazing challenge to have. That means whoever sent that in, nice job, because that means that you have a footprint outside of just the families who are attending worship on Sunday morning. That means you're missional. You're reaching out. Something you're doing is bringing those kids in. And so, number one, good job, whoever that is. Congratulations. But yeah, it presents a unique challenge, especially when we're throwing out numbers like 70. Upwards of 70% of a kid's spirituality comes straight from their parents. I think it's a matter of utilizing the leverage that you have. The study also says 10 to 12% can come from the youth ministers. There's another study that says every kid needs 7 adults pouring into their life that will help them traverse faith through junior high and high school successfully. So 7 adults. So most people count 2 of those as their parents. The church has the opportunity to provide the other 5. So that's even more of a reason why we have to bolster our volunteer numbers. The more adults you can get pouring into those kids' lives besides yourself, because we only have the relational bandwidth of around 7 people apiece. I mean, we can only really pour into around 7 people. So the more adults you get involved in your ministry, the more adults who can pour into them, who can be a part of their lives, who can go to their soccer games, who can check in on them, who can be there when crisis happens. The more adults we surround those kids with, the better their faith is going to be, and the more we're going to be able to really leverage that 30% that we do have. The second piece is, I was working with Fourth Presbyterian in Chicago, in downtown Chicago. Gosh, it's probably 10 or 15 years ago now. I mean, it was a long time ago, and they were doing this inner city garden. They had taken over a tennis court, and they had brought in mulch, and they were building a garden there. And it was for the kids of really impoverished areas around that tennis court. And the most beautiful thing happened. The kids slowly began to come out of the housing complexes and started to come out of the apartment complexes. And they began to just kind of look around the edges of the fences as we were gardening. And eventually they made their way inside the fence. And they wouldn't engage you, but they would just kind of stand there and watch. And eventually they'd kneel down beside you and ask you what you were doing. So that was that first level. Then the second level is you'd see parents start to kind of come out. And they would start to come up to the fences, and they would see their kids laughing. They would see their kids being taken care of. They were seeing their kids being loved. And eventually they made their way inside the fence as well. and some beautiful things happen. So I think we gotta just love those kids. Be there for them above and beyond in unconditional ways. And every opportunity we get, we're not proselytizing the parents. We're just showing those parents how much we love their kids. Mm. And I don't know many parents who that doesn't break down some walls. And if they see that, they might just ask the question, well, if they love my kids this much, maybe they can love me that much too. I know that's abstract, but surround them with a lot of adult volunteers and to love the heck out of them in some really visible ways. And hopefully, and again, this is not a quick fix. That doesn't happen over the course of a week or 2 weeks or a summer. That happens over the course of years of lots of hard work. At the end of the day, you may never hit that 70% of the parents, but at least you know that 30% that we have some involvement in, we're leveraging that pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit more about your blog, organicstudentministry.com. You had a really nice piece just this weekend after the terrorist attack in Paris, and you've a couple of your blog posts have just really blown up. Pardon, that is just an awful pun.
No, I get it.
That was not intended at all. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Gone viral.
Yeah, gone viral.
And you've got a couple, of course, one about the Confederate flag, which was a huge deal, and then the heresy of keeping Christ in Christmas, which is a perennial favorite. I'm sure we're already there with Starbucks cup season and all that.
This is the season for craziness.
But that's a great resource for folks.
Yeah.
And you've written a ton. You're continuing to pour out great stuff.
The blog just I started out writing it as a student ministry blog, and pretty quickly I realized that my world doesn't just revolve around what happens in student ministry, because I know for a fact that our kids, their worlds don't just revolve around what happens in student ministry. And so, I'm guilty of not just writing about student ministry on the blog. I really like to look at the world around us, and like Tinder and the Confederate flag, keeping Christ in Christmas. Holy moly, that one still is it just continues to go. That one and the Confederate flag. I just think there's a broader narrative that we've got to be vocal in and try to be prophetic in. And I think we miss a lot of opportunities. And again, I think as youth ministers, we have a unique perspective on the world and on families. And I like to write about a lot of different things. If something moves me in my heart, you can about guarantee I'm going to write about it. The thing about the attacks in Paris this weekend, and gosh, we're still praying for those folks and their intense loss and just the unbelievable amount of pain that they're experiencing. But the post wasn't it wasn't 5 ways to cope with your kids about the Paris attacks. Right. It was about a dance party that my wife and my 3 kids and I had, and we have these impromptu dance parties. We have them about once every 2 or 3 weeks. And as the news of the attack was rolling in on our phones and watches and stuff, we chose to just keep dancing, because what do you do in the face of absolute horror and terror? You have to dance, you have to sing, you have to embrace one another, and you have to just believe that our God's a God of hope, and that we are not people of fear. We're not people of fear. We're not people of war. We're people of grace and love and peace. And I was reminded of right after the earthquake, there's this unbelievable scene of hope where the women of Port-au-Prince came into the streets and they danced and they sang and they said, "This is not going to define us. There's something greater than this." And so just a little bit of hope that we're defined by something bigger than fear.
Yeah. That's that powerful image from Paris of the crowd gathered and the candles lit and the words "not afraid." Not afraid.
That's really right. Yeah, we live in a scary place right now. I mean, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of a lot of things to make us afraid, but we have to just keep holding on to that. I mean, over and over again in Scripture, what do we see? I mean, we're about to enter into Advent. What do we see? Be not afraid. Man, that's powerful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like to write on the blog. It's fun. I'd love for you to come check it out. Organic studentministry.com. Write about all sorts of things. Love to get in comments with you. I do have to approve the comments, because after the Confederate flag thing, I was targeted by like 4 or 5 different hate groups. So that was really exciting.
Oh my gosh.
Nothing but fun, guys.
Yeah. Wow. Well, in our last 10 to 15 minutes here, I want to kind of switch gears and talk about the National Youth Workers Convention coming up this weekend in Louisville. And you're going to be there. You're going to be live blogging. Youth Specialties has been around for a long time. I got to know Carly Iaconelli through her work with the Wild Goose Festival, and what an amazing person she is. And of course, her late husband Mike was, and it's in other people's hands now, but the that continues to be a hub for youth ministers and youth leaders. I haven't been to a NYWC in a while. What's it like? What are you excited about? What's going to be happening there in Louisville that you're?
It's wild and crazy. I mean, it is just wild and crazy. Mark Matlock and his team just really put on one of the top events in the nation for youth ministry in terms of scope and size. I'm involved with some other youth ministry events like Progressive Youth Ministry Conference with Doug Padgett and Tony Jones, and love those guys, and they're doing amazing work. But in terms of the general youth ministry, it's not one slant or the other. You know, you can be on both sides of the aisle and still come to National Youth Workers. And it's just a huge gathering. It is a lot of fun. There's so much stinking energy. You put that many youth ministers in one place together, it is just sensory overload in some of the most beautiful ways. So yeah, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be live blogging at different events and different seminars and large group sessions. I would love for you to, if you see me, come over and say hey. I'd love to talk with you and hear about your experience, what you're seeing in your context. I'd love to talk about organic with you. Love to talk about consulting with you, but really just love to talk with you and just hear what's going on. I'll be all over the convention the entire time. So look at me. I got the beard. And people usually pick me out by the beard. So
Really?
So come to, I know it's weird. I know.
The beard, it seems pretty ubiquitous now.
Yeah, well, I think it has become more and more so, but that's the thing people still comment on, which is really funny.
Okay.
I don't get it. Yeah, there's lots of youth ministers with beards. But yeah, so anyways, come by.
The original.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know what to do now though, because I have to use the beard in order to have a chin, you see. So I don't have that prominent jawline, but the beard helps me out with that. So
there you go.
But yeah, come see me at National Youth Workers. Follow the hashtag NYWC. Follow that on Twitter and on Facebook, and I will be live blogging on organicstudentministry.com, so you can follow the whole conversation there.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, come by and introduce yourself. We'll take a selfie together. We'll do something crazy and fun.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. As we wrap up here, Stephen, any kind of closing thoughts or stuff that you on your heart, on your mind, if you're speaking to other folks doing youth ministry right now, words of encouragement?
Yeah. I think the thing that just continues to come up in my heart is the work of youth ministry is not easy work. It's so funny, and you guys that are listening, you know what this feels like. You have a kid or you have a parent that says, so what exactly do you do all day? And in their mind, they're thinking a lot of Facebook, a lot of YouTube, a lot of, just playing games. But we know that it's a lot different, that you are in the middle of one of the biggest transitional times in a kid's life. And you're also in the middle of that with their parents, which is really scary for them. So the biggest thing I would tell you is keep on keeping on. Keep loving kids, keep loving parents, keep connecting them with something that's greater than them. which is our hope that we find in Jesus. Keep the faith. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Oh my gosh, please take care of yourself. I talk with youth ministers every single week who are just exhausted. Their spirits are torn. They feel consistently beat down. And you got to take care of yourself. You got to feed yourself. You got to have something that brings your spirits, that makes your heart sing. And if you don't have that, stop what you're doing and find that. Find something that's going to make your heart sing. And if you need help with that, shoot me an email. Check me out. Come over to the blog and let's talk. Because I hope, that you find joy every day when you walk into your office. Because if you don't, we need to fix that. So take care of yourself. Love those people, because your job is not easy. It's not YouTube and Facebook all day. Just know that there are other people that know that too.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Well, I hope people will track you down. I'm sure you'll have some copies of this
I will.
That they can pick up. Of course, they can get it at chalicepress.com. It's 20% off every day. And it's available through Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all those places too. So wherever you buy books, whatever format, Kindle, Nook, we've got it for you. Do get a hold of this, and this will help you in whatever church context you're in. That's exactly what it's for. So Stephen, thank you so much for the hour and getting a chance to talk. And this video will be on Chalice Press YouTube channel, available in the archive immediately as soon as this live stream is done, so folks can go back and watch it, share it, and we hope they will with the folks who are doing youth ministry out there.
Very cool. Thanks for checking us out, guys.
Yeah. All right. Take care. Have a great day.
Take care. Bye-bye. See y'all.